Two black men dressed like that expect me to believe this helicopter belongs to them? Captain Travis Harlan sneered as he ripped the registration papers from Malcolm Reed's hand and threw them into a rain-soaked puddle. Then he deliberately ground them beneath his boot. Sergeant Kyle Benton laughed. Maybe they stole the helicopter and printed those papers at a copy shop. Marcus Reed stepped forward. Verify the registration. Harlan shoved the 48-year-old black man backward. Know your place. Men like you don't walk onto an airfield with $1 million aircraft and start giving me orders. Malcolm's eyes hardened. Harlan pointed toward the helicopter. Rip it open. Crack! A hydraulic arm crushed the fuselage. Their late father's framed photograph fell from the cabin and shattered. Marcus stared at it. That was our father. Harlan kicked the broken frame across the pavement. Then maybe your father should have taught you two not to pretend you belong in places you clearly don't. Benton smirked. Take away the helicopter and those fancy papers, and you're just two nobodies in handcuffs. Malcolm remained terrifyingly calm. You'll remember saying that. Suddenly, headlights flooded the airfield. 10 government vehicles were approaching. Harlan smiled. He thought help had arrived for him. He was wrong. Stay with us, because what happens when those doors open will change everything. Comment your city and local time below, and subscribe if you believe no human being's dignity should depend on a uniform, title, or rank. 6 hours earlier, Legacy 1 descended through a clear Virginia sky. From the passenger seat, Malcolm Reed watched green farmland stretch beneath the helicopter. At 48, the black man carried himself with quiet discipline. His dark jacket was plain, his boots worn, and nothing about his appearance suggested wealth or influence. Beside him sat his identical twin brother, Marcus. Marcus had broader shoulders and a more imposing presence, but today he wore faded jeans and an old brown jacket. Neither man looked like what strangers imagined the owners of an expensive private helicopter should look like. That was exactly how they preferred it. Legacy 1 touched down at Hawthorne Regional Airfield outside Richmond. Waiting near the hangar was 62-year-old Daniel Price. Daniel smiled as the brothers climbed out. Your father would have loved seeing her fly again. Marcus looked back at the helicopter. He would have complained about my landing first. Daniel laughed. That sounds like Samuel. Malcolm smiled faintly. That morning, the brothers had attended a private memorial honoring their late father, Samuel Reed, a respected rescue pilot who had spent decades flying into storms, floods, and disasters when everyone else was trying to escape them. Legacy 1 had been restored in his memory. To Malcolm and Marcus, it was worth far more than money. Daniel had barely started walking them toward the hangar when police sirens echoed beyond the airfield fence. Malcolm stopped. 3 patrol vehicles entered through the security gate. A 4th followed. Captain Travis Harlan stepped from the lead vehicle. His eyes immediately moved from the helicopter to the 2 black brothers standing beside it. Sergeant Kyle Benton joined him. Officer Emily Dawson followed several steps behind. Harlan approached without introducing himself. Whose helicopter? Ours, Marcus answered. Harlan looked him up and down. Then he looked at Malcolm. A faint smile appeared. Both of yours. Yes, Malcolm said. Harlan glanced toward Legacy 1 again. Interesting. There was something in the way he said it that made Daniel uncomfortable. What seems to be the problem, Captain? Daniel asked. We received a report about a suspicious unmarked aircraft. Daniel frowned. There's nothing suspicious about it. They had landing clearance. Harlan ignored him. Registration. Malcolm opened his leather document case. He removed the aircraft registration, insurance records, landing authorization, and identification. He handed everything to Harlan. Everything you need should be there. Harlan barely looked at the first page. You expect me to believe this? Malcolm's expression remained neutral. I expect you to verify it. Benton chuckled. Harlan studied Malcolm's simple jacket. That's a very expensive machine. We know. And you own it? Yes. Harlan looked toward Marcus. What do you do? Marcus's expression changed slightly. Is my occupation relevant to the aircraft registration? Harlan's smile disappeared. It becomes relevant when I'm asking the questions. Malcolm placed one hand lightly against his brother's arm. Marcus understood. Sty come. Daniel stepped forward. Captain, I've managed this airfield for 18 years. Malcolm and Marcus Reed are authorized to be here. Harlan finally looked at him. I didn't ask you. Daniel stopped. Officer Dawson had taken the registration documents and begun entering information into her tablet. Malcolm noticed. Harlan noticed too. What exactly was reported? Malcolm asked. Harlan turned. You seem awfully curious about police procedure. If we're being questioned, I'd like to understand why. You landed an unidentified helicopter near restricted infrastructure. Daniel shook his head. This isn't restricted infrastructure. Harlan's jaw tightened. Marcus glanced at Malcolm. They both understood what was happening. The facts weren't producing Harlan's suspicion. His suspicion was searching for facts. Dawson approached quietly. Captain? Harlan turned. The registration number matches the aircraft. For the first time, irritation flashed across Harlan's face. Keep checking. I already confirmed the tail number. Then check again. Malcolm said nothing. Dawson returned to her tablet. Benton walked around Legacy 1, inspecting the polished fuselage. Nice machine. Marcus watched him carefully. Please don't touch it. Benton turned. Excuse me? The helicopter belongs to us. I'm asking you not to touch it without a reason. Harlan stepped between them. You don't get to establish the rules here. Malcolm calmly answered. We're not establishing rules. We're asking you to follow the ones that already exist. Silence fell. Daniel looked down. Dawson stopped typing. Harlan stared at Malcolm. You think you're smarter than everyone standing here? No. Then stop talking like you're in charge. Malcolm met his eyes. I never said I was. That answer somehow angered Harlan even more. He took the documents from Dawson. What did you find? The registration is current. Insurance is valid. Landing authorization checks out. Marcus exhaled. Then we're finished. He started toward the helicopter. Stop. Harlan's voice cracked across the tarmac. Marcus turned. Harlan pointed toward the painted line beside the hangar. Both of you stand over there. For what reason? Marcus asked. Because I'm not finished. Malcolm stepped beside his brother. Captain, your officer has verified the aircraft. Harlan looked at them. Documents can be forged. Dawson frowned. Sir, the information is matching the database. Harlan turned sharply toward her. I said, keep checking. Dawson hesitated. Then her tablet beeped. She looked down. A new symbol had appeared beside Legacy 1's registration. Not an error. Not a warning. Something else? Dawson opened the attached record. Her expression changed immediately. Captain! Harlan sighed. What now? Dawson stared at the screen. I've never seen a security designation like this before. Malcolm heard her. So did Marcus. The brothers exchanged one brief glance. Harlan reached for the tablet. And the moment he saw the restricted notation attached to Legacy 1, his investigation should have ended. Instead, it was about to become far worse. Captain Travis Harlan stared at Officer Emily Dawson's tablet. Beside Legacy 1's registration was a small security marker, followed by a restricted verification code. What does that mean? Harlan demanded. I'm not sure, Dawson admitted, but the registration is authentic. The system is directing me to a secondary verification channel. Harlan handed the tablet back. Then it proves nothing. Malcolm Reed watched him carefully. It proves the documents weren't forged. Harlan turned toward him. It proves you know how to put information into a database. Marcus shook his head. You asked for registration. Your officer verified it. What exactly are you looking for now? Whatever you two are hiding. Daniel Price stepped between them. They're not hiding anything. Harlan pointed at him. One more interruption and I'll remove you from this airfield. Daniel stared at him in disbelief. This is my airfield. Not while I'm conducting an investigation. Benton moved behind Marcus. Hands on your head. Marcus slowly turned. For what? You heard me. Marcus looked toward Malcolm. Malcolm gave the smallest nod. Do not give them an excuse. Marcus raised his hands. Benton searched him roughly, pulling at his jacket and emptying his pockets onto the wet pavement. A wallet. Case. A folded memorial program. And an old brass aviation pin that had belonged to Samuel Reed. Benton picked it up. Marcus's voice hardened. Put that down. Benton smirked. Sensitive about jewelry? It belonged to our father. Benton dropped it onto the pavement. Marcus took one step forward. Harlan immediately reached toward his holster. Back up. Marcus stopped. Malcolm moved between them. My brother hasn't threatened anyone. He moved toward an officer. Because your sergeant threw our father's property on the ground. Harlan stepped closer to Malcolm. You have an answer for everything, don't you? No, just what I've witnessed. That response made Dawson look at Malcolm differently. There was precision in the way he spoke. He wasn't arguing emotionally. He was documenting. Daniel bent down, retrieved Samuel's pin, and handed it to Marcus. I'm sorry. Marcus closed his fist around it. Harlan turned toward Dawson. Anything else? The secondary system provides a federal verification number. Harlan's expression tightened. Federal? Yes. Call it. Dawson began entering the number. Malcolm watched. Harlan noticed. Why are you looking at her screen? Because it concerns our aircraft. You don't get to supervise my officers. I wasn't. You keep acting like you understand how this works. Malcolm met his gaze. I understand enough to know verification should come before accusation. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Harlan snatched Malcolm's document packet. He flipped through it and tossed the papers onto the wet pavement. There, now stop hiding behind paperwork. Marcus's face hardened. Malcolm simply crouched. One by one, he collected the documents from the rain. Malcolm, Marcus said quietly. It's fine. No, it isn't. Malcolm stood. His papers were wet now. His voice remained calm. No, it isn't. Several airport workers had gathered near the hangar. 2 were recording with their phones. Benton noticed. Captain. Harlan looked toward them. Put those phones away. Nobody move. This is private property, Daniel said. They're employees. Harlan pointed toward Benton. Clear the area. Secure any recording devices interfering with this investigation. Dawson looked uncomfortable. Captain, they're standing outside the perimeter. Harlan ignored her. Benton marched toward the workers. Malcolm watched every movement, every command, every reaction. Marcus leaned closer. You're counting. Malcolm didn't look at him. Everything. Dawson's tablet suddenly connected. She turned away slightly, listening. This is Officer Emily Dawson. I'm requesting verification of aircraft registration November 7 Reed Lima. She paused. Yes, Legacy 1. Another pause. Her expression changed. I understand. Harlan walked toward her. What? Dawson covered the phone. They're transferring me to a federal security desk. Harlan's eyes narrowed. Why? They wouldn't say. Give me the phone. Sir, they specifically asked me to remain on the line. Harlan took it anyway. This is Captain Travis Harlan. I'm commanding this scene. He listened. His face hardened. No, I don't need to provide justification to you. Malcolm and Marcus exchanged another glance. Harlan ended the call. Dawson stared at him. Why did you hang up? Because we're not waiting around for some bureaucrat. But they were verifying the aircraft. I said we're done with that. Dawson lowered her voice. Captain, the registration is valid. Harlan looked toward Legacy 1. Maybe the registration is. Then he looked at the brothers. That doesn't mean they are. Marcus laughed once in disbelief. So now the helicopter is legal, but we're suspicious for owning it? Harlan walked toward him. Maybe you're transporting something. Based on what evidence? Harlan didn't answer. Malcolm did. There isn't any. Harlan spun toward him. That aircraft is being searched. Malcolm's expression changed. No. It was the first time his voice carried unmistakable authority. Harlan almost smiled. No? You have verified the registration. You have found no weapon, no contraband, no outstanding warrant, and no emergency. Harlan stepped closer. Are you refusing? I am stating clearly that we do not consent to a search. Dawson looked down at her tablet again. The restricted security designation was still flashing. Beneath it, a new message had appeared. Contact federal authority before accessing aircraft. Her stomach tightened. Captain. Harlan ignored her. He pointed toward Legacy 1. Benton. The sergeant smiled. Yeah? Search the helicopter. Marcus immediately stepped forward. You touched that aircraft without legal authority, and you are making a mistake you cannot undo. Harlan stared directly at him. Then he gave Benton the order that would change everything. Open it. Benton moved toward Legacy 1 before Emily Dawson could finish her warning. Captain, the system specifically says not to access the aircraft until federal verification is complete. Travis Harlan did not even look at her. He gave an order. Sergeant Kyle Benton reached for the helicopter door. Marcus Reed stepped forward. We do not consent to this search. Harlan immediately blocked him. You already made that clear. Then why is he touching our aircraft? Because I decide what happens at this scene. Malcolm Reed stood beside his twin. No, Captain. The law decides what happens here. Harlan's face tightened. You really enjoy hearing yourself talk. Malcolm said nothing. Benton pulled the handle. Locked. He tried again. Harder. Doors secured. Harlan glanced at Marcus. Open it. No. Harlan smiled coldly. Then I'll open it for you. Daniel Price hurried forward. Captain, stop. That locking system is integrated into the airframe. Force it in correctly and you can damage the door assembly. Harlan turned. I thought I told you to stay back. You're about to damage a legally registered aircraft on my property. I'm about to search it. With what warrant? Harlan stepped toward Daniel. I have reasonable suspicion that this aircraft may contain evidence connected to criminal activity. Evidence of what crime? Malcolm asked. Harlan turned sharply. You don't get to interrogate me. I'm asking you to identify the basis for the search. Harlan pointed toward the helicopter. Unusual flight activity, suspicious ownership circumstances, refusal to cooperate. Marcus stared at him. Our flight was authorized. You verified ownership, and refusing an unlawful search isn't evidence of a crime. Benton muttered. Everybody suddenly thinks they're a lawyer. Marcus looked at him. No, some people simply know their rights. Harlan's patience snapped. Enough. Open the exterior compartments. Benton opened the accessible storage panels. Emergency equipment, tools, overnight bags. Nothing illegal. Nothing, he finally admitted. Dawson exhaled. Captain, we should stop. Harlan looked at the empty compartments as if they had personally insulted him. What's inside the cabin? Daniel answered. Personal belongings. I wasn't asking you. Harlan walked to the door and examined the reinforced locking mechanism. Marcus stepped closer. You have searched the accessible compartments. You found nothing. End this. Harlan faced him. You seem nervous. I'm angry. Why? Because you keep turning the absence of evidence into an excuse to search harder. Harlan smiled. That cabin stays locked and suddenly you're angry. Sounds like I'm getting closer. Malcolm shook his head. You're manufacturing suspicion from our objection to your conduct. Harlan pointed at him. And you're one sentence away from being detained. Malcolm held his gaze. Then be certain you can explain why. Harlan stepped within inches of Malcolm. You think being calm makes you intimidating? No. You think expensive property makes you important? No. Then what exactly do you think you are? Malcolm answered quietly. A citizen asking you to follow the law. Something shifted in Dawson's expression. Harlan saw it. That made him angrier. Cuff them. Marcus stared at him. For what? Interfering with an active investigation. We're standing beside our own helicopter. Turn around. Benton reached for Marcus. Marcus instinctively pulled his arm back. 3 officers immediately tensed. Malcolm spoke before anyone could move. Marcus! His brother looked at him. Malcolm slowly extended both hands behind his back. Not here. Marcus understood. Marcus turned around. Benton snapped cuffs around his wrists. Marcus said nothing. Another officer cuffed Malcolm. Dawson looked disturbed. Captain, what exactly are we charging them with? I'll determine that after the search. Harlan ignored her. He pointed toward the cabin. Get inside. Benton retrieved a pry tool from a police vehicle. Daniel stepped forward again. Don't do this. Harlan blocked him with one arm. Back away. That helicopter belonged to their father. Harlan glanced at the brothers. Marcus's expression changed. Daniel continued. Samuel Reed spent most of his life flying rescue missions. His sons restored this aircraft because it was connected to him. Whatever you think you're proving, don't destroy something you can't replace. Benton looked through the window. There's a framed photograph inside. Marcus spoke immediately. Leave it alone. Harlan noticed the emotion in his voice. Your father? Marcus remained silent. Harlan walked toward the window. Harlan shrugged. Sentimental souvenirs don't make an aircraft exempt from a search. Malcolm's voice stayed controlled. Nobody said they did. Then you won't mind us continuing. We mind you damaging property without lawful justification. Harlan turned toward Benton. Open it. Benton wedged the tool beside the door. Daniel shouted, You'll bend the frame. Benton pushed. Metal groaned. Marcus took a step forward. An officer grabbed his shoulder. Stay back. Marcus looked at Harlan. You know your officer found nothing. Harlan said nothing. You know the registration is valid. Silence. You know the federal verification told you to wait. Harlan's jaw tightened. Marcus continued. And you're doing this anyway. Harlan walked toward him. Maybe your father taught you that refusing orders makes you brave. Marcus's eyes hardened. My father taught me that authority without discipline is dangerous. Harlan leaned closer. Well, your father isn't here. Malcolm's expression finally changed. Something colder. Captain, he said, leave our father out of this. Harlan looked at both brothers and smiled. Then he turned toward Benton. Force the door. Benton drove the pry tool deeper. Crack. The locking assembly twisted. The cabin door shifted outward. Marcus stared at the damage. Malcolm stared at Harlan. Inside the cabin, Samuel Reed's framed photograph trembled against the wall. Rain tapped against the fuselage while workers watched from behind the perimeter. No one spoke. The search had stopped looking like an investigation. It now looked like a man refusing to admit he had been wrong. Dawson's tablet beeped again. She looked down. The federal security message had changed. Do not proceed. Authorized contact inbound. Dawson lifted her head. Captain, you need to see this. But Harlan was already reaching for the damaged cabin door. And none of them yet understood how much worse his next decision would make everything. The damaged cabin door moved only 3 inches before Benton pulled the pry bar free. Emily Dawson stepped toward Harlan. Captain, please look at this. Harlan finally took the tablet. Do not proceed. Authorized contact inbound. For half a second, uncertainty crossed his face. Then it vanished. Could be an automated warning. It isn't, Dawson said. The verification desk sent it directly. Harlan handed the tablet back. We're taking them in. Marcus stared at him. For what? Obstruction while I determine what's inside that aircraft. Malcolm looked toward the bent door, then at Harlan. You damaged our property after being instructed not to proceed, and now you need a charge to justify what you already did. Harlan stepped close. Careful. Malcolm's voice remained level. I am being careful. That answer followed Harlan all the way to the temporary interview building beside the hangar. The brothers were separated. Malcolm sat in a narrow room beneath fluorescent lights, his wet jacket hanging heavily from his shoulders. Harlan entered carrying a yellow legal pad. Let's try again, he said. Where did you get the helicopter? I already answered. Answer again. My brother and I own it. How did you pay for it? Malcolm looked at him. Is personal income now part of your probable cause? Harlan dropped the pen. You're not in a courtroom. No. Then stop performing. Malcolm leaned back slightly. I'm answering questions. You're simply dissatisfied with the answers. Harlan studied him. Most frightened suspects filled silence. Malcolm used it. Who are you? Harlan finally asked. Malcolm Reed. I know your name. Then you know who I am. Harlan's eyes narrowed. Across the hallway, Benton questioned Marcus. You military? Marcus looked up. Why? The posture. The way you watch doors. Marcus said nothing. Benton leaned forward. Security contractor? No. Pilot? I can fly. That wasn't my question. Marcus smiled faintly. Then ask a relevant one. Benton's chair scraped backward. You think you're tough because your brother keeps quoting procedure? My brother isn't quoting anything. That bothered Benton more than Marcus intended. Outside, Dawson returned to the original dispatch record. She read it twice. The caller had reported an unfamiliar helicopter landing at Hawthorne Regional Airfield and asked whether it belonged there. That was all. No weapons. No suspected contraband. No threat. No report of illegal flight activity. Yet Harlan's incident notes now described possible unlawful aviation activity and suspected concealment of criminal materials. Dawson felt cold. She walked to Harlan's interview room and knocked. He stepped outside. We need to talk. Later. The dispatch report doesn't match your probable cause statement. Harlan's expression hardened. What are you implying? I'm saying the caller never reported a crime. He reported suspicious activity. He asked a question. Harlan moved closer. You're young, Dawson. Don't confuse hesitation with integrity. Her face flushed. I verified the aircraft, and I'm investigating the occupants. You ordered the aircraft searched because they refused cooperation. Refusing consent isn't probable cause. Harlan stared at her. Then he lowered his voice. Go back outside. Dawson didn't move. That's an order. She walked away. Inside Malcolm's room, Harlan resumed questioning. Malcolm immediately noticed the change in his expression. Officer Dawson found something. Harlan froze. Malcolm continued. You were gone 3 minutes. You came back angry instead of confident. You're guessing. Probably. Harlan leaned across the table. Your brother told us you can afford that helicopter, but neither of you will explain how. Malcolm knew Marcus would never have said that. The lie was obvious. My brother told you no such thing. Harlan straightened. How would you know? Because you separated us, hoping one of us would contradict the other. Harlan said nothing. Malcolm's eyes remained fixed on him. You're not looking for the truth anymore. Outside, Dawson returned to Legacy 1. Daniel Price stood behind the police tape. Officer, you mentioned the helicopter was restored. Yes. Did the brothers install a security system? Daniel hesitated. I know Samuel always believed aircraft should preserve their own records. Malcolm upgraded something after the restoration. What kind of system? I don't know. Dawson examined the damaged door. A tiny indicator near the cockpit remained illuminated. She checked her tablet and found an active encrypted transmission associated with Legacy 1. Her pulse quickened. The aircraft had been sending data since shortly after police arrived. Audio, system events, external camera feeds, possibly everything. Daniel saw her expression. What is it? I think this helicopter has been recording us. Inside, Marcus was returned to the corridor just as Malcolm emerged. For several seconds, the brothers stood together under guard. Marcus spoke quietly. He's changing the story. I know. They asked whether I told you where the helicopter came from. Same tactic. Marcus looked toward the airfield. We could end this. Malcolm understood exactly what he meant. 2 phone calls could transform the entire scene. One from Malcolm, one from Marcus. Everything would stop. Malcolm shook his head. Our jobs shouldn't be the reason they stop. Marcus studied his brother. And if they destroy Dad's helicopter? Malcolm's jaw tightened. Then they answer for destroying a citizen's property, not for destroying ours. Marcus looked away. That answer hurt because he knew Malcolm was right. Dawson hurried toward them, but Harlan intercepted her. What now? I found an encrypted transmission coming from the aircraft. Harlan's face changed. What transmission? It appears to be a security archive. Turn it off. I don't think I can. Harlan looked toward Legacy 1. For the first time that day, fear replaced arrogance. If that aircraft is transmitting evidence outside this airfield, Dawson said, then whatever happened here may already be preserved somewhere we can't access. Malcolm heard every word. So did Marcus. The twins exchanged a glance. And somewhere beyond Hawthorne, an encrypted server was quietly preserving every order, every warning, every refusal, and every second Harlan could never rewrite again. Harlan turned toward the helicopter. He had spent hours trying to find evidence inside Legacy 1. Now he had finally found something, evidence against himself. Harlan stared at the tiny green indicator glowing inside Legacy 1. Where is it transmitting? Dawson shook her head. The destination is encrypted. Then disconnect it. That could destroy evidence. Harlan turned sharply. Evidence of what? Dawson held his gaze. Neither needed to answer. Daniel Price stepped closer to the police tape. Samuel designed his aircraft that way. Harlan looked at him. What did you say? Daniel glanced toward Malcolm and Marcus. Their father believed a pilot should never depend on one recording surviving an accident. He used to say the truth was useless if it disappeared with the machine. Marcus lowered his eyes. He could almost hear Samuel saying it. Daniel continued. After the brothers restored Legacy 1, Malcolm upgraded the system. Cameras, cockpit audio, external feeds. I don't know the technical details. Harlan's face tightened. So they've been recording police? The helicopter has been recording its surroundings. That's not what I asked. It's the answer. Harlan pointed toward the gate. Remove him. 2 officers approached Daniel. Dawson stepped forward. Captain, he hasn't committed an offense. I'm clearing my scene. This is his property. Harlan's voice dropped. Are you challenging another order? Dawson hesitated. Daniel saved her from answering. It's fine. He stepped backward voluntarily. Before leaving, he looked at the damaged helicopter. Samuel Reed saved 17 people during the Fairmont floods, Daniel said quietly. He flew when everyone else was grounded. Marcus looked up. Daniel's voice became rougher. He spent his life rescuing strangers. That helicopter is one of the last things his sons have connected to him. Harlan gave a dismissive wave. Take him out. Marcus strained against the cuffs. Malcolm stepped closer. Marcus. His brother stopped. Harlan noticed. Again, one word from Malcolm had controlled a man Benton had struggled to intimidate for hours. That bothered him. Dawson walked toward Malcolm. Mr. Reed, what exactly is stored remotely? Harlan immediately stepped between them. He doesn't answer questions unless I'm present. Malcolm looked past him at Dawson. Follow the evidence, officer, not me. Dawson froze. There was something about the sentence. Not a request for help, not fear. It sounded like advice from someone who had spent years telling investigators exactly that. Harlan noticed her reaction. Enough. He ordered the brothers move toward the temporary holding rooms. As Marcus crossed the tarmac, a distant sound made him look toward the western horizon. Aircraft. Too high to identify clearly, but Marcus knew the rhythm. He had spent most of his adult life around military aviation. He stopped for half a second. Malcolm noticed. What? Marcus looked ahead again. Nothing yet. Harlan heard him. What does that mean? Marcus almost smiled. It means nothing you need to worry about. Harlan stepped closer. You're in handcuffs. I'd reconsider the attitude. Marcus said nothing. A young officer suddenly hurried from a patrol vehicle. Captain Harlan? What? We received a call asking about the helicopter. From who? A federal office. Silence. Dawson immediately looked at Malcolm. Malcolm gave no reaction. What office? Harlan demanded. They wouldn't identify the department through dispatch. They requested confirmation that Legacy 1 is secure. Harlan stared at the officer. Did you tell them we're conducting an investigation? Yes. And? They asked to speak directly with whoever authorized the search. For the first time, Benton stopped smiling. Harlan took the radio. If they call again, route everything through me. Dawson frowned. Captain, everything. The officer nodded. Harlan looked toward the brothers. So that's the game. Malcolm raised an eyebrow. What game? You have influential friends making calls. Marcus almost laughed. You still think this is about who we know? Harlan stepped closer. Maybe lawyers, maybe politicians, maybe someone who thinks a phone call makes you untouchable. Malcolm's expression remained calm. No one is untouchable. The words landed harder than Harlan understood. He walked away. Inside the temporary office, Harlan opened his incident report. The search had produced nothing. No contraband, no weapon, no false registration, no outstanding warrant. Nothing. Yet he had detained 2 men and damaged their aircraft. He needed justification. He began typing. Subjects became increasingly uncooperative. He paused, then continued. And actively obstructed officers attempting to secure suspected evidence. Dawson appeared in the doorway. She had read enough. They didn't obstruct us. Harlan stopped typing. They refused access. That isn't the same thing. It is now. Dawson stared at him. You're changing the report. I'm documenting evolving circumstances. You're documenting something that didn't happen. Harlan slowly stood. You need to decide whose side you're on. Dawson's expression hardened. I thought we were supposed to be on the side of what happened. Outside, Malcolm watched through the window. Marcus stood beside him. He's building a charge. Yes. Obstruction? Probably. Marcus shook his head. And after that? Malcolm looked toward Legacy 1. He needs the search to produce something. What if it doesn't? Malcolm's eyes narrowed. Then he'll keep searching until he destroys enough of the aircraft to claim he had a reason. As if summoned by the prediction, Harlan emerged. Benton. The sergeant approached. Get maintenance equipment. Dawson followed Harlan outside. For what? Harlan pointed toward Legacy 1. If there's a concealed compartment, it may be behind the interior panels. Daniel shouted from beyond the perimeter. There is no hidden compartment. Harlan ignored him. Marcus stepped forward. You've searched it. Stop. Harlan looked at the damaged door, then at the helicopter that had refused to provide the evidence he desperately needed. His pride had carried him too far to retreat. Bring the equipment. Dawson stared at him. You could destroy the aircraft. Harlan's answer was cold. Then they should have opened it when I asked. Malcolm watched Benton walk toward the maintenance shed. He finally understood what Harlan intended to do. This was no longer a search. It was destruction disguised as investigation. And Harlan was about to cross the line from a mistake he might have explained into an act no report could hide. 20 minutes later, the growl of a maintenance vehicle rolled across Hawthorne Regional Airfield. Marcus Reed watched it approach Legacy 1. A hydraulic arm was mounted on its front. His expression changed immediately. No. Malcolm stood beside him, wrists still cuffed behind his back. Marcus. No, Malcolm. Look at what he brought. Captain Travis Harlan walked toward them. You had plenty of opportunities to cooperate. Marcus stared at him. We did cooperate. You verified everything. Harlan pointed toward Legacy 1. Then you won't mind us finishing the search. Officer Emily Dawson hurried after him. Captain, there is no legal justification for this. Harlan stopped. What did you say? You have no evidence of a concealed compartment. You have no warrant. Federal verification specifically told us not to proceed. Several officers turned toward them. Dawson swallowed but continued. If you damage that aircraft now, you're doing it after being warned. Harlan stepped close. You want to keep that badge? Dawson's face went pale. Harlan lowered his voice. Then stop embarrassing yourself in front of your unit. For a moment, she looked frightened. Then she straightened. My badge doesn't change what happened. Malcolm watched her carefully. Harlan pointed toward the perimeter. Stand down. Dawson did not move. Now, she finally stepped back. Benton approached the maintenance operator. Bring it closer. Daniel Price shouted from beyond the police line. Don't touch that helicopter. Harlan ignored him. Daniel pushed toward the tape. 2 officers stopped him. You've already damaged the locking assembly, Daniel shouted. There's nothing hidden inside. Harlan turned toward him. You interfere again and you'll spend the night in a cell. Daniel stared helplessly at Legacy 1. Marcus saw the pain on the older man's face. Then Benton opened the damaged cabin door. He began pulling interior panels loose. One panel cracked, then another. Nothing. No compartment, Benton said. Harlan's jaw tightened. Check behind the rear section. There's structural framing, then expose it. Daniel shouted again. That's part of the airframe. Marcus moved. An officer grabbed his arm. Stay where you are. Marcus turned slowly toward Harlan. You know there's nothing there. Harlan walked closer. Then why are you so worried? Because that aircraft belonged to our father. Harlan smiled. There it is again. Marcus's eyes narrowed. What? The father story. Malcolm's voice became cold. Don't. Harlan looked toward him. Don't what? Use our father to provoke my brother. Harlan laughed. You think everything is some sophisticated strategy? No. Malcolm looked directly into his eyes. I think you've realized you were wrong and now you need us to become the problem. Harlan's smile disappeared. Benton called from the helicopter. Captain, still nothing. Silence. Harlan stared at Legacy 1. Every empty compartment made his original decision harder to defend. Every minute without evidence made retreat more humiliating. Remove the rear access panel. Benton hesitated. That's going to require force. Do it. Dawson stepped forward again. Captain, stop. Harlan spun around. You're relieved from active participation. Dawson froze. Give me your radio. Sir? Your radio. She slowly removed it. Harlan took it. You can explain your insubordination later. Dawson looked toward Malcolm. Malcolm gave her a small nod. Not approval. Recognition. She had tried. Harlan turned toward Benton. Continue. The hydraulic equipment moved forward. Marcus's breathing changed. Malcolm heard it. Look at me. Marcus kept staring at the helicopter. Marcus. Finally, his twin turned. He wants a reaction, Malcolm said quietly. He's destroying Dad's helicopter. I know. We could stop this with one call. I know. Marcus's voice broke with anger. Then why aren't we? Malcolm's eyes were wet now, though the rain hid it. Because every person who doesn't have that phone call deserves to know what happens when someone like him thinks nobody important is watching. Marcus stared at his brother, then slowly nodded. Behind them, metal screamed. Crack! Part of Legacy 1's rear panel buckled. Daniel closed his eyes. Benton reached inside. Nothing. Harlan's face hardened. Again. The hydraulic arm shifted. This time it struck closer to the cabin. A framed photograph fell from the interior wall. It hit the wet pavement. Glass shattered. Marcus stopped breathing. Samuel Reed smiled through the broken frame. The same photograph their father had kept in his home for nearly 20 years. Marcus took one step forward. Two officers tightened their grip on him. Don't touch that, Marcus said. Harlan walked over. He picked up the photograph. For several seconds, he studied Samuel Reed's face. Marcus spoke quietly. That was our father. Harlan looked at him, then dropped the photograph. Your father isn't relevant to my investigation. The frame landed beside his boot. Marcus pulled against the officers. Leave it alone. Harlan nudged it through a puddle. Maybe he should have taught his sons that expensive toys don't put them above police authority. Marcus surged forward. Officers reacted instantly. Malcolm stepped between them as far as his cuffs allowed. Marcus. His brother stopped. Harlan smiled. There, finally showing who you really are. Marcus stared at him with fury. Malcolm turned toward Harlan. You should stop now. Something about his voice silenced everyone. Harlan laughed. Is that another warning? Yes. Harlan stepped closer. What exactly happens if I don't? Malcolm looked at the broken photograph, then at the helicopter, then back at Harlan. The truth stays exactly what it was. Harlan scoffed. Hit it again. Dawson whispered. Oh, God. The hydraulic arm slammed forward. Crack. Metal folded inward. Marcus flinched as if someone had struck him. Malcolm closed his eyes for 1 second, then opened them. He looked toward his brother. Remember the time? Marcus looked at his watch. Already did. The encrypted security indicator inside Legacy 1 continued blinking. Everything was being preserved. Every order, every warning, every strike. Then light appeared beyond the airfield gate. One pair of headlights. Then another. Then another. Black government vehicles turned onto the access road. 5, 8, 10. Behind them came larger vehicles carrying personnel. Marcus recognized immediately by posture alone. Harlan saw the convoy and smiled. Finally, he straightened his jacket. Looks like somebody competent came to help finish this. Malcolm said nothing. Marcus looked at his twin. For the first time all afternoon, the anger in his face disappeared. Harlan walked confidently toward the approaching convoy. The first vehicle stopped. Its rear door opened. A senior federal official stepped onto the rain-soaked pavement. Harlan raised his hand. Captain Travis Harlan, I'm commanding this investigation. The official walked straight past him. Harlan's smile faded. The man continued toward the two black brothers standing beside their destroyed helicopter. He stopped directly in front of Malcolm. And before Harlan could understand what was happening, the official opened his mouth. Director Reed. The two words cut through the rain. Captain Travis Harlan froze. The senior federal official stopped directly in front of Malcolm. Sir, are you injured? Malcolm looked down at his handcuffs. No. Harlan stared at him. Director? No one answered. Two more federal officials approached. One immediately turned toward an officer. Remove those cuffs. Harlan stepped forward. Wait. These men are being detained as part of an active investigation. The senior officials slowly faced him. Captain, do you know who this man is? Harlan looked at Malcolm. Same wet jacket. Samovarn boots. Same calm black man he had spent hours treating like a criminal. I know what he claims his name is. The official's expression hardened. Malcolm Reed is the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Silence swallowed the airfield. Dawson covered her mouth. Benton went pale. Harlan stared at Malcolm as if the man had physically transformed in front of him. That's impossible. Malcolm said nothing. The cuffs opened. Harlan shook his head. He never identified himself as... He identified himself accurately, Dawson whispered. Everyone looked at her. He said his name was Malcolm Reed. Harlan's face drained. Then another sound rolled across the tarmac. Vehicle doors opening. Uniformed military officers emerged from the second section of the convoy. Marcus watched them approach. A lieutenant general walked at the front. Harlan looked from Marcus to Malcolm. His fear deepened. No. The lieutenant general stopped several feet from Marcus. Then every senior officer behind him came to attention. Their hands rose simultaneously. A salute. General Reed. Marcus remained handcuffed. Nobody moved for a heartbeat. Then the lieutenant general's expression changed. Get those cuffs off the general. Benton backed away. Another officer quickly unlocked Marcus. Marcus rubbed his wrists. Harlan stared at the 4 stars visible on the arriving officer's command documents, then back at the man whose father's photograph he had just kicked through the rain. Marcus Reed was a 4-star United States Army general. Harlan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Benton whispered, "Captain." Harlan suddenly turned toward Malcolm. "You should have told me." Malcolm looked at him. "Why?" The question seemed to confuse Harlan. "Because you're the FBI director." Malcolm stepped closer. "And if I weren't?" Harlan said nothing. If Marcus repaired helicopters for a living, would destroying his property become acceptable? No, but if I drove a truck instead of directing a federal agency, would throwing my documents into the mud become lawful? Harlan swallowed. That's not what happened. Dawson looked at him. Malcolm heard the lie. So did everyone else. He turned toward the arriving officials. "No one touches Captain Harlan." Harlan blinked. Malcolm continued. "No special treatment, no retaliation, no shortcuts." The senior official nodded. "Understood. Preserve the scene." Malcolm pointed toward Legacy 1. "Every piece of damaged material stays where it is. Secure body camera footage, dispatch recordings, airfield surveillance, written reports, radio traffic, and every device connected to this incident." Harlan stepped backward. "You're using your position against me." Malcolm faced him. "No, I'm making sure my position cannot protect me or punish you." Harlan stared. "The evidence will decide what happens." Dawson stepped forward. "Sir." Malcolm turned. Dawson hesitated. "Captain Harlan terminated the federal verification call after they instructed us to wait." Harlan spun toward her. "Dawson!" And he ordered me to stop checking the registration. "You're finished." "No," Malcolm said. Harlan stopped. Malcolm looked at Dawson. "Continue." She took a breath. The original dispatch report did not mention contraband, weapons, or criminal activity. I told him that. Later, his incident report included circumstances that weren't in the original call. Harlan pointed at her. "She's trying to save herself." Dawson's hands trembled, but her voice did not. "I also warned him before the aircraft was damaged." The senior federal official began taking notes. Benton slowly stepped away from Harlan. Harlan noticed. "You followed my orders." Benton said nothing. Marcus walked toward Legacy 1. He crouched beside the broken photograph of Samuel Reed. He lifted it carefully from the puddle. The glass was destroyed. The photograph remained intact. Marcus wiped rain from his father's face. A federal investigator approached Malcolm. "Director, there may be an issue with evidence from the aircraft itself." Harlan looked up quickly. "What issue?" The investigator checked his tablet. "Not an issue for us." He turned the screen toward Malcolm. Legacy 1's security system transmitted continuously to a remote encrypted archive. Dawson exhaled. Malcolm nodded. "I suspected it had." The investigator continued. "External cameras, cabin audio, system logs, approximately 4 hours of synchronized recordings." Harlan stopped breathing. The investigator looked toward the damaged helicopter. The archive was automatically locked when the airframe registered forced entry. Benton whispered, "Can it be deleted?" "No." Harlan stared at him. The investigator continued. "A protected copy has already been secured." Malcolm looked at Harlan. For hours, the captain had controlled the scene because he controlled the narrative. That power was gone. Marcus walked back, carrying the damaged photograph. Harlan looked at the 2 brothers. "I didn't know who you were." Marcus stared at him. "That's the problem." Harlan lowered his eyes. Malcolm shook his head. "No, the problem is that you thought you needed to know." Federal investigators began placing evidence markers around Legacy 1. Another team collected body cameras. A technician secured Harlan's radio. Then, an investigator approached carrying 2 printed documents. "Director Reed, we've recovered the original dispatch record." He placed another document beside it. and Captain Harlan's preliminary incident report. Malcolm looked at both pages. The differences were obvious. Harlan saw them too. The investigator raised his eyes. These reports describe two very different incidents. Malcolm stepped away, then find out which one actually happened. Behind him, Harlan stared at the papers. For the first time that day, nobody cared what he claimed. The evidence was about to speak for itself. The investigation began before the rain stopped. Federal investigators converted Daniel Price's operations room into a temporary evidence center. Body cameras were collected. Dispatch records were downloaded. Airfield surveillance was secured. Captain Travis Harlan sat alone. For the first time that day, he controlled nothing. Malcolm Reed stood beside a window overlooking Legacy 1. A federal investigator approached him. "Director, we need your statement." Malcolm turned. "You'll get it. Given your position, we can arrange." "No." The investigator paused. "Interview me exactly as you would anyone else." Marcus looked at his brother and nodded. Malcolm continued. "And General Reed receives no special procedure either." "Understood." Across the room, technicians synchronized the evidence. The first recording was the original dispatch call. A nervous civilian voice filled the room. "There's a helicopter I don't recognize landing at Hawthorne. Is somebody supposed to be there?" That was all. No weapon, no contraband, no threat. Then Harlan's preliminary report appeared on another screen. Possible unlawful aviation activity. Occupants displaying evasive behavior. Potential concealment of criminal materials. Dawson stared at him. "You added all of that." Harlan leaned forward. "I interpreted the circumstances based on what developed at the scene." An investigator shook his head. "The report was edited before the aircraft search produced anything." Harlan said nothing. Next came Dawson's body camera footage. Malcolm appeared, handing Harlan the registration documents. Clear. Cooperative. Calm. Then Harlan's voice. "You expect me to believe this?" The video continued. Dawson confirmed the registration. Harlan ordered her to check again. The federal verification warning appeared. Harlan ignored it. Then investigators played the moment he terminated the verification call. Harlan shifted in his chair. "You don't understand what I was dealing with." Marcus finally spoke. "What were you dealing with?" Harlan looked at him. Marcus stepped closer. "Two men with valid registration?" Silence. "A legally landed helicopter?" Harlan looked away. "Or your own refusal to accept that you might have been wrong?" Nobody interrupted. The next video showed Benton searching Marcus. Samuel Reed's brass aviation pin fell onto the pavement. Benton dropped it. Then came the forced entry, the cracked door, the warnings, the handcuffs. Harlan's voice filled the room again. "I'll determine the charge after the search." Dawson closed her eyes. Even Benton looked uncomfortable. Then the investigators opened Legacy 1's encrypted archive. The image was sharper, the sound clearer. Harlan's order echoed through the room. "Force the door." Another recording followed. Dawson warning him, Daniel pleading with him, Marcus telling him there was nothing hidden inside. Malcolm repeatedly stating that they did not consent. Then the hydraulic equipment appeared. Benton looked at Harlan. "You told me it was authorized." Harlan turned toward him. "Don't start. You said we had emergency authority. You followed the orders voluntarily." Benton's face changed. "So now this is on me?" "You operated the equipment." "Because you ordered me to." Harlan slammed his hand on the table. "You're a sergeant. You could have refused." The room went silent. Dawson stared at him. "So could you?" Harlan slowly looked toward her. The statement landed harder than anything else said that evening. An investigator resumed the recording. Samuel Reed's photograph fell. Marcus's voice came through the speakers. "That was our father." Then Harlan's response. "Your father isn't relevant to my investigation." The video showed his boot pushing the broken frame through the puddle. Marcus turned away from the screen. Malcolm watched. He forced himself to watch every second. The hydraulic arm struck Legacy 1 again. Crack. The investigator stopped the recording. That impact occurred 17 minutes after Officer Dawson received the federal instruction not to proceed. Harlan looked exhausted now. "I made a judgment call." Malcolm finally spoke. "No." Everyone turned toward him. "A judgment call happens when facts are incomplete and a decision must be made." He pointed toward the screens. "You had the facts." Harlan swallowed. "The registration was valid. The landing was authorized. Your search found nothing. Your officer warned you. Federal verification told you to stop." Malcolm's voice never rose. "You didn't make a judgment call. You kept going because admitting you were wrong became harder than hurting someone else." Harlan looked down. The senior investigator closed the evidence folder. "Captain Travis Harlan, effective immediately. You are relieved of command pending criminal and administrative investigation." Harlan looked up. "What charges?" "That determination will be made by prosecutors based on the evidence." Potential matters include unlawful detention, destruction of property, falsification of official records, and obstruction-related conduct. Benton stood abruptly. What about me? You are suspended pending investigation into your participation. Benton sank back into his chair. Harlan looked toward Malcolm. You did this. Malcolm shook his head. I didn't operate the machine. You brought federal investigators. I didn't write your report. Harlan's face tightened. You could have ended this hours ago. Malcolm understood. You mean I could have told you my title? Yes. The word exploded from Harlan. If you had told me who you were, none of this would have happened. Silence followed. Malcolm walked toward him. That is exactly why I didn't. Harlan stared. Malcolm pointed through the window toward the ruined helicopter. If I had been a mechanic, would that damage be acceptable? No. If Marcus had been a schoolteacher? Harlan said nothing. If our father had left that helicopter to two men with no government connections at all? Malcolm stepped closer. Would they deserve less protection? Harlan's eyes dropped. The law was supposed to stop you before my title frightened you into stopping. No one spoke. Later, Dawson stood outside beside Malcolm. I should have stopped him sooner. You challenged him when doing so could have cost you your career. I still couldn't stop the helicopter from being destroyed. Malcolm looked toward Legacy 1. You preserved the truth. Dawson looked at him. That matters more than you realize. Marcus approached carrying Samuel's damaged photograph. The restoration company called. Malcolm turned. Marcus looked at the crushed fuselage. They said repairing her may cost more than replacing her. Malcolm studied the helicopter. Then maybe replacement makes sense. Marcus remained silent. Malcolm immediately knew his brother disagreed. Marcus wiped another streak of mud from their father's photograph. Dad never threw away something just because somebody else decided it was broken. Malcolm looked at Legacy 1 again. The door was twisted. Panels were crushed. Rainwater covered the floor. But beneath all that damage remained the aircraft Samuel Reed had loved. Malcolm placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. Then we rebuild her. Marcus finally smiled. Behind them, investigators escorted Harlan away from the command area. He looked once toward the twins. Neither brother celebrated. Justice had begun, but revenge had never been the point. And months later, when Legacy 1 rose into the Virginia sky again, what the Reed brothers chose to do with the aircraft would transform the ugliest day of their lives into something Harlan could never have imagined. 5 months later, morning sunlight poured across Hawthorne Regional Airfield. The place looked different, or perhaps Malcolm Reed simply saw it differently now. He stood outside Daniel Price's hangar, wearing the same kind of simple dark jacket he had worn on the day everything happened. Beside him, Marcus stared through the open hangar doors. Legacy 1 waited inside, restored. The damaged panels had been replaced. The twisted cabin door had been rebuilt. Every structural component had undergone inspection, but Marcus had insisted on preserving one small scar near the rear fuselage. Why leave it? Daniel had asked. Marcus had touched the mark gently. Because repair doesn't have to mean forgotten. The months since the incident had changed far more than the helicopter. The investigation into Captain Travis Harlan had expanded after investigators reviewed years of complaints and internal reports. The evidence from Hawthorne was impossible to dismiss. The original dispatch call contradicted his report. Dawson's body camera proved she had repeatedly warned him. Legacy 1's encrypted archive captured his orders after federal verification instructed him to stop. Harlan was permanently removed from command while prosecutors pursued charges connected to unlawful detention, destruction of property, falsification of official records, and obstruction-related conduct. Kyle Benton faced consequences of his own. He had tried to argue that he had merely followed orders. Investigators rejected that defense. Orders did not erase responsibility. Officer Emily Dawson, meanwhile, had feared losing everything. Instead, the investigation confirmed that she had repeatedly attempted to follow procedure. Her record was cleared. More importantly, her testimony became part of a broader reform effort. Regional departments introduced stronger rules for aircraft verification, preservation of electronic evidence, supervisory accountability, and documenting disagreements when officers believed an order might be unlawful. Malcolm never asked for any of it to carry his name. Neither did Marcus. That morning, dozens of people gathered near the hangar. Dawson arrived quietly. Marcus noticed her first. Officer Dawson. She smiled. General. Marcus shook his head. Marcus is fine today. She laughed nervously. I'm still getting used to that. Malcolm approached. Dawson looked at Legacy 1. She looks incredible. She flies this afternoon, Daniel said proudly. Dawson smiled, then noticed the remaining scar. You missed a spot. No, Marcus replied. We kept that one. Dawson understood. Near the hangar entrance stood a new sign, the Samuel Reed Aviation Scholarship. The brothers had spent months deciding what Legacy One should become. They could have restored the helicopter and returned to private travel. Instead, Marcus proposed something different. Their father had spent his life opening doors for people who believed aviation belonged to someone wealthier, better connected, or born into opportunity. So the brothers created a scholarship in his name. It would provide flight instruction, technical education, mentoring, and aviation career support for people from communities where such opportunities often seemed unreachable. Legacy One would become its symbol. Daniel approached carrying something wrapped in cloth. This belongs inside. Marcus already knew what it was. He carefully unfolded the fabric. Samuel Reed's photograph. The original frame had been destroyed, but the photograph had survived. Daniel had restored it and placed it behind new glass. Marcus stared at his father. "He looks disappointed." Malcolm smiled. "He always looked disappointed when you landed." Marcus laughed. For a moment, they were not an FBI director and a four-star general. They were simply Samuel Reed's sons again. Marcus carried the photograph into Legacy One and secured it inside the cabin. When he returned, people were gathering for the scholarship announcement. Malcolm stepped toward the microphone. He looked at the crowd, then at Dawson, then at Legacy One. "5 months ago, my brother and I stood on this airfield in handcuffs." The crowd became silent. Many people have asked why we didn't simply tell Captain Harlan who we were. Malcolm paused. "The answer is simple." He looked toward Marcus. "We should not have needed to." Dawson lowered her eyes. Malcolm continued. "Justice cannot depend on whether the person being mistreated has an important title waiting to be revealed." Several people nodded. "A mechanic deserves lawful treatment. A teacher deserves it. A janitor deserves it. A veteran deserves it. Someone unemployed deserves it. Someone wearing an expensive suit deserves it, and someone wearing worn boots deserves it." His voice remained calm. "Dignity is not a reward for status." Marcus watched his brother. "It belongs to everyone." Malcolm stepped away from the microphone. There was no celebration of Harlan's downfall, no applause for revenge. Instead, Marcus approached the first scholarship recipients. He handed each of them a small brass aviation pin, modeled after the one their father had carried. "Someone once treated this symbol like it was worthless," Marcus told them. He looked toward Legacy One. "Never let another person decide what your dream is worth." Later that afternoon, the hangar doors opened completely. Legacy One rolled into the sunlight. Daniel performed the final inspection. Marcus climbed into the pilot's seat. Malcolm took the seat beside him. Inside the cabin, Samuel Reed's restored photograph rested securely where it belonged. Marcus started the engine. The rotors began turning, slowly, then faster. Malcolm looked through the windshield toward Dawson and Daniel. Dawson raised one hand. Daniel smiled. Legacy One lifted from the ground. The airfield grew smaller beneath them. Marcus looked toward his brother. "Dad would still complain about the landing." Malcolm smiled. "Then give him something else to complain about." Marcus laughed. The helicopter climbed into the clear Virginia sky. Below them remained the place where someone had once tried to reduce two black men to assumptions. Above them stretched open sky. The scar remained on Legacy One's fuselage, but the aircraft flew anyway. And perhaps that was the lesson Samuel Reed would have understood best. People could damage what you loved. They could underestimate you. They could misuse power and mistake silence for weakness. But they could not decide what you became afterward. Legacy One turned toward the horizon, not as a monument to what had been destroyed, but as proof of what could be rebuilt. Never measure another person's worth by their clothes, job, skin color, wealth, or title. Malcolm and Marcus deserved dignity before anyone discovered their power. Real justice begins when we protect people who have nothing impressive to reveal. If this story meant something to you, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories about dignity, courage, and justice.